When he turned his back from shoulder to shoulder, it looked like as wide as the tailgate of a truck.
And just darkness, literal darkness, just came like all over, just all over me except where I was standing.
This thing let out the most blood-curdling, mind-blowing, spine-tingling scream that you've ever heard in your life, and it cut through me like a knife.
And I knew that they were going to take me. I just knew it. And then the next thing I can remember is being levitated.
Well, when I look in there, I see two big eyes staring back at me.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night. Hey there, believers. I got another good show for you today. This week, I'm bringing on Chris Holm. He is the host of the Conspire a Theory podcast, and he's got some personal experiences. He's got all kinds of stuff to talk about. So we're going to dig right into it. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time beforehand. I just want to let you know that as of now, I still have everything going on the website. Past episodes, I might be like a week or two behind on those, but you can go there for past episodes. You can go there for members only content. You can go there to reach me in case you've had an encounter or an experience that you'd like to share. I'm trying to make it like a one-stop shop. And speaking of shop, I'm going to try to bring back some kind of merch, some kind of store as soon as possible. I want to have it up and running before the holidays. And what you know is, like, as soon as I close the store, within a week, I'm getting messages. Hey, what happened to your store? What happened to your store? I didn't realize that people were even buying stuff, to be honest, you know. And if you had an order that went out, I know I'm talking to one guy, he had placed an order a few months ago, but it's either it didn't process or it got lost in the mail. It's the only one I know of that it happened to, but I'm trying to figure that out. But yeah, right now everything's on there. I'm having some issues with the members only pricing, because I got it set so low that once the website takes their fee, which is a pretty reasonable fee, but it's still like 30% of the total asking price. So that's not a good fee. You know, Patreon was taking like 10%, and I thought that was a little high. Maybe it was 11%, something like that. But I switched over thinking that it's all, you know, going to be inside my control now. It's going to be underneath my website and all this. But just the processing fees, they charge a certain amount, which is reasonably low. It's only like 30%, or no, 30 cents plus 6% or something like that. But where I'm only charging $1.75 a week, it's taking about 30% of that. You know, I wound up getting like $1.25 of it. So that's incredibly low. That's it wouldn't be bad if it was a monthly charge. So I may have to switch from $1.75 a week to the typical $7 a month fee. That's what all podcasts seem to be charging. So watch for that. I might have to do that. I'm sorry if that's the case, but I'm just trying to let you know. October, it might just go to a flat $7 a month, okay, or November or December, whenever this episode even airs. It may have to go to $7 a month instead of $1.75 a week, just so they're not taking half the money. It's just common sense. All right. I'm going to send this link out to Chris, get him on here with me. I just got in the door from work, so I'm still on school mode. I'm trying to shut that brain off and turn on podcast mode.
Hey, Bo, how's it going today?
Doing good, Chris. How you doing, buddy?
It's good to finally see you, finally get to meet you, because we've been ping-ponging email on, the sort of how to get this show going for quite a while now.
Yeah, and I think I had to cancel on you once before, and I apologize for that.
No problem. I know how it goes. So long as we get it done.
That's it.
That's all that matters to me. But I first came across your show through the tinfoil hat. And I was so impressed. I said, this guy sounds cool. I'm gonna listen to his show.
I appreciate it.
And then I listened to a couple episodes, and then I listened to a couple more, and then now I'm like a regular listener. So I really do appreciate, you putting your show together, because I know that times are tough right now, and I definitely want to know that you are appreciated.
Thank you, for real. That's nice of you, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. You have a podcast too, right? Conspire Theory.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I
Um,
found having a podcast is the best way to trick interesting people into having conversations with you. Yeah, you want to talk to someone interesting, you have yourself a podcast, and
Yeah.
and that'll increase your chances of having a good conversation with people like 100%.
it does seem to work.
Yeah, when I first started the podcast about a couple years ago, and I've been sort of bouncing this idea around, because I would go to these conventions and stuff that would spring up around town. They'd be like, small, like comic book conventions, anime conventions, all that stuff. I used to volunteer at an anime convention, and you run into the most interesting people.
Yes, you did.
And I would run into a man named Ken Gerhard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was pretty much, me and him were practically neighbors, because we're both in San Antonio. So I'd run into him quite a bit. And I would just, go by his desk, and, and he would have his book set up. And every single time I met him, I'd buy a book. And then we'd talk for about 45 minutes or so. And it just became a regular thing until I ran out of books to buy from him. I figured, because he's such a good guy. He gave me, amount of his time, and, and I was trying to be respectful, not get in the way of a sale or anything.
Right.
And I realized that, us sitting here and talking, it's like, man, I wish other people could, because we talk about the most interesting things. I wish I could, get this down and share it with people, because I'd sure like to see a show of people talking, having these kinds of, out there conversations. So then I got the idea, I'll just make a podcast, because I had been, working with one of my friends. He had a podcast where we would talk video game news, and then I would come in, and he sort of, brought me in as sort of the color commentary, someone just his hatchet man, so to speak.
All right.
To just come in and be the heel for his show. So then I of course, helped with a little bit of help from the friends in the community, set up my own show. And then I started reaching out to, what my interests are, which are more, paranormal and stuff like that. I really dug in deep, because there was this one time where there was this one show that happened in San Antonio, and it was, my friend, we had a podcast review where we would review conventions. It's called Contact with Ed Solis.
Nice.
And we would just review, conventions and stuff like this. And this was, way before, pandemic. So, everything was bustling, everything was growing. In Texas, I believe Texas is huge.
Right.
So there's a convention happening everywhere. I think it reached to the point where there was like a convention for every single weekend, and it reached to the point where there was almost 2 conventions every single week. You could find a convention somewhere in the state. So they were happening all over the places, and we would go to them, we'd have fun, and we'd, do our review. And then there was this one that was a little bit off the cuff for him. He said, well, some of my family, they're on staff with this other convention, but it's a paranormal thing. And And I know that's kind of like your thing, isn't it, Chris? And I'm like, yeah, let's check it out. Let's go. And it was like tickets for this. This was one of those where, it was a more smaller, more specialized convention. And tickets would have been like $100 for like a regular person. So it was really up there. But, luckily with his connections, which we had no problem abusing, we got in as press to cover the convention. And of course, after that, I was in love. I was in love with, meeting and talking to these, to folks who are just also into the paranormal just as much as I am, maybe more so, because they're the ones that are making books, they're producing content, they're pretty much, not just part of the community, but they're like, producing the community, engaging in that community.
Yeah.
And then that sort of solidified me, as far as, I got to get this on record. It got that bug started where I got to get a podcast. I just can't keep the stuff to myself. You can't keep all this stuff inside. So then that led to, my forming and making my own podcast, starting everything on my own, learning to do everything on my own type of thing. Because I had my friends that could do it, but we all had our lives and stuff. And I always, even though I was willing to pay them, they weren't willing to produce my podcast for me. I had to learn to be more than just a pretty face and just to be talent and just to be the hatchet man and the heel. So I picked it up really quickly, and I learned how to produce. I learned how to mess with mics and stuff like this. I learned, like how to operate equipment, how to, all this fancy equipment and stuff like this, and click that and mess with all these programs and that and the other, how to do sound editing and all that stuff like that. And I just love it. I mean, I've had a few fumbles here and there, but it's been great for me. And I just kept it going, and I think I started it, I think, a couple months after the passing of my mother, when she had passed, because, I had this idea, because she was sick with cancer for quite some time. And I was like, oh man, I figured I'd have the story where I just get all the spooky stories from her before she passed. And then I could go into the whole podcasting thing, full forth, because then I wouldn't have to worry about her anymore.
Right.
And, because the thing is, I mean, the podcasting stuff and any kind of internet community, it gets ugly. It does.
Yeah.
And if my mom's in a better place, then that means no one can hurt her. So if anyone's offended by anything that I say, people get crazy on here.
Right.
They'll come after family.
Yeah.
They don't care. Just it's just to get under your skin. They'll do anything.
That's it.
So when that was, but instead, when I'm sitting there with her, it's I'm just spending time with her, so it's like, so that whole getting the family spooky stories didn't happen, but I did get to, spend some what I feel most people in the paranormal don't get is they get that time to say goodbye, that time with someone special where, they get to be there in their final moments. And, I always treasure those moments, because there would be times where we would just sit, I'd just sit with my mother and we'd watch television, and I'd be like, going through the Netflix stuff. And I say, hey, Mom, you want to watch the Enrique Iglesias? Fluffy, he's funny. And she's like, no, he's stupid. And then we'd watch some, god awful Netflix comedy. And who knows, but it's just that, that spending that time together and stuff like that, that getting to say goodbye. And what I feel with like a lot of people in this community, sometimes they don't have that. So when they like go out ghost hunting or something, they're looking for that final confirmation to know, is my loved one, are they okay? Are they safe? They probably didn't get to say goodbye. They probably didn't get, that resolution.
Yeah.
And, my mother, she had passed the day after Mother's Day.
Oh man. Which
was particularly hard. And I remember the day before, that night before, I stayed up all night because, you know, I mean, I have a bit of an artistic flair in me, which I got from her. And I would make Mother's Day cards for her every year. I just make a little Mother's Day card. I draw it out. I color it with markers and stuff like that. You know, I draw like a picture in the front and stuff like that.
Right.
And then I put money in. And of course, the better I'm doing financially, the more money I put in. So she loved that. So, and this one, you know, because it was special. And as I was doing it, I had tears running down my face because I knew that this would be the last one. You know, that I'd never make another Mother's Day card ever again after this one. And even though I was crying the entire time, you know, I did everything I could to, you know, I did like a little picture, like a little drawing of a family of foxes, of little white foxes, you know, a mother, a father, and siblings to represent my family. And then, you know, and I gave it to, you know, my mother, and she was in and out of a morphine haze because, you know, she was in her final days. And, you know, she loved it, of course. And
Yeah.
And it's just, there's a certain light in someone's eyes when she looks at me and you just feel seen. And I'm sitting there and, you know, I just, for those few seconds where you just feel like, you know, she sees me, and then they go back into that haze again, back into that fog. And it's just the most treasured moment that you can ever have. And it's, you know, it's powerful. So I can understand, you know, why some of us want to know if there's something after.
Right.
You know, I completely get that. You know, is there something beyond? Because, you know, the times that we all have together, you know, a lot of us, we take it for granted, and I get it. You know, we all have to live, we all have to pay our bills, we all have to, you know, we all have to live in the real world and all that stuff. So, but, you know, when you get those few treasured moments, they mean something. And so I you know, and then the day after, I think I spent all night, I just couldn't sleep. I spent all night just playing Fallout 4, you know, on my PC. I modded it out. So I was just playing, you know, video games with obnoxious, you know, mods and stuff of that nature. And then one day I hear you know, one of my siblings knock on my door, and it's like, okay, I know what this is about.
Right.
And then we, of course, go through the process, and then, you know, it was tough on everybody, but, you know, I had the chance to say goodbye. I had the chance for my mother to say, you know, that she loved me and all that stuff. And so I got what most people probably yearn for the most, which is closure.
That's it.
And that closure means so much. Of course, later on, you know, in dreams, you know, I'd feel the presence of my mom. You know, again, I think there was one of the most memorable times was where I think I was having a dream where I was at a party. I was at a frat party or something like that. Now, what I would be doing at a frat party, drinking and stuff like that, I don't know, but that's what the dream dictated, is that I'd be at that party. So I'm sitting there, I'm in a toga, I'm talking to people in toga outfits, and there's partying going on. And then in the background of this party, like if you're watching a screen, you see the background characters in the background is my mother. And there's like a little kiddie pool, and she's on a lawn chair, and she's pouring margarita mix into the kiddie pool. I guess that's some sort of like party thing. So it's sort of like, and I felt that presence there, and it was just so reassuring that even in my, you know, drunken stupid dreams, you know, she's still out there, you know, doing it, just getting along and stuff like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think the most recent one that I had was with her presence was, I was in this hotel, and the hotel was busy, like a convention going on. I don't know it didn't matter. It was just busy. And I felt the rush. So I knew that stuff was going on. And then, you know, there's you know, art vendors and artisans and this arts and craft table. And then I noticed, you know, again, sitting at the table is, you know, my mother. So then, of course, you know, I say hello, and then I just wrap my arms around her and I just hold on to her. And I don't know what happened, but this is where, when people say they experience, you know, time dilation or something of that nature, but I swear I must have held on to her for like 15 minutes to 5 hours.
Yeah.
And in dream time, whatever that was, it felt like an eternity, but it wasn't enough, because this mix of emotion came over me, and I just started crying in the dream, and I was just hanging on to her, just so grateful for that moment.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
And then, yeah, and it's just, and of course, my mom is there, and she's just patting me on my head and just, continuing with whatever artisans that she's doing at the table and stuff like that. Business as usual. But, I have my moment, I get what I need type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of thing. And I wake up and, you still feel the weight of all those emotions being processed. And I'm just nothing but grateful, just so grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, one, I appreciate you sharing with me everything that went on with your mom. And I love your perspective on everything. It's really easy, because I lost somebody, my grandmother, who was like a mom, she was right there. I know how hard it is, and I kind of took a different path than you did.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have that closure and stuff, and I spiraled out of control into a dark, ugly depression for a long time. And so I found it comforting that you had that, some solace. But
Yeah.
when your mom visits you in those dreams, is that how you take it? Like it's an actual visitation, like she's checking in with you, or do you look at it as less of a paranormal thing and more like just a random,
I've come to an understanding in my dealings with the paranormal that there are two possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
One, that all this is really happening, that there are aliens and dogmans out there and what have you, and Bigfooters and, all of this nature, or it's some sort of coping mechanism and it's all happening in our head and we're just making it up. Either one is fascinating and should be explored. But, I'm not going to be disappointed if it's one or the other. If it's all something that's, those are just coping mechanisms, I completely understand that. And if it's just like a mental note, like some sort of mental thing that's just happening within our facilities so that we could better process our grief, I'm fine with that. It
Right.
doesn't affect me because it's the experience. I've had the experience.
Right.
And when I talk to some of these people, when I, whether I'm doing artistic recreation of their accounts, or I'm talking to investigators and they tell me about this case, it's the experience that I want to dig into and all that stuff. Sure, we'll ask, is it true? Did it really happen? Yeah, we're still figuring that out as far as how to properly measure and gain, what we can gain from those experiences. I get that from a scientifical method, but, as far as the experience itself, I'm still at the part where, I want to hear it. I want to, poke at it and prod at it and figure it out. I'm still in the let's figure it out type of thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So,
and you're right. Either way it goes, it's an experience, right?
yeah.
And I of course lean more toward this is really happening. Everything's real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're right. Either way, it's our reality, or it's their reality. Whoever is the experiencer, it is their reality. But I do like to look at it, and I don't know how it works as being visited. If I have a dream with my grandmother, I like to consider that a visitation and not just some random image firing into my brain while I'm sleeping.
Yeah, just the synapses doing their thing.
Right. And if that's what it is,
yeah,
prove it. You know what I mean?
Well, I would understand the argument.
Right.
I would understand that. I would have no problem with it if it was one thing or the other.
Yeah.
But I still have the experience. I still got something out of it.
That's it. It means the world to me.
I still got the ride. You know, I still got the ride.
That's it. That's it. And you were talking about doing artist renderings, recreations and stuff, and you actually sent me some in some of our email exchanges it is fantastic.
No, thank you.
I absolutely loved it, and I would probably like to share it if you don't mind.
Yeah, you're welcome to. You need anything more, I'll be happy to hook you up.
Okay, I appreciate it. Because I like to share stuff, at least with the members section of the show, of some of the background information or the extra stuff that comes in, because I get photos and stuff all the time of whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes I like to share it, and I would love to share some of your work.
That's no problem.
Would you want to go into that? How you do that? The process of, like, if anybody wanted to come to you for,
yeah, sure,
mission or whatever.
I believe the first image I sent to you was of an investigator sketch that I had touched up, which was of a green man in the corner of a room.
Yes.
Now, here's what the investigator had told me, is that his mother had come to him with an account of where she was walking. She was late at night. She was walking through her house, and in the corner of the hallway, she had turned and she'd seen a little green man, like he looked somewhat like a gray, like we see of the typical gray alien. And he was propped up in the upper corner, like sprawled out like Spider-Man, is how she could best describe it. And he was surrounded by sparkles. And I can best describe these sparkles like if you're into sports and you've ever been, you've ever hit the ground too hard, or you've ever been, smacked really hard. When you see stars, those sort of like silver leaflets that are like flying around your eyes, that kind of stuff is what I imagined she was probably seeing. And I took his sketch. He had done an initial sketch, and then I applied, my 4 years of college training and stuff, which I never got the degree for, but at least I got the training, and 20, 30 plus years of experience, drawing art and comics and stuff like that. And I decided, okay, let me try to flesh this out for him and get this done right. Get this done as best as I can to best, represent the experience, to the best of my ability, because, and then I listened to her account. They had gotten it on tape, and I, drew it out, because what the conclusion is that she had seen the man, and then she jumped, you jumped out, because when you see something that shouldn't be there, you're going to have a reaction. And her reaction was like a sudden jump. It was like when you see a jump scare. Mm-hmm. And when she had jumped, the man had blinked out. He had just blinked out of reality, out of whatever sleeve of reality that he had slipped into. And that was pretty much it, So I did as best as I could to illustrate, like the presence of I drew like a gray sort of type of creature. And then I did it sprawled up in the corner, again, like Spider-Man, just hanging out there with a couple of his hands up in the walls and his feet up along the walls and that nature. And I did as best as I could to represent, what a typical gray would look like in that situation.
Yeah, and you did a great job. It was like chilling to think about it, because anytime I look at something like that, I try to put myself in the position of the experiencer. And I thought, my goodness, if I looked up and saw something like that up in the corner of my room,
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, there are tons of artists out there, and I mean, I know I'm not going to like leave as much of a mark as them, because they're more experienced, more upper tier type of stuff than myself, and I'm not trying to get in competition with anybody too much. I know I'm not going to, blaze any trails here, but the thing is, I'm just as curious as everyone else about the experience and stuff of that nature.
That's right.
But when I do get the opportunity, when someone brings an opportunity for me to sort of recreate their account, I do the best that I can to get as much details as I can of the experience, so that I can come up with like the best angle and means of presenting it. Because as far as I know, I don't think I'll ever run into a gray. I don't think I'll ever run into a Dogman. I don't know if I'll ever run into Bigfoot. I don't know if I'll ever hit, stub the toe of a Nephilim. I don't know any of that. But as far as the closest that right now, what I can do to get to the experience is to recreate it, because I'm in a means I'm stepping into their shoes. I'm doing it as best as I can to step into the experience,
yes,
and bring it to life.
Yes.
So when they bring these to me, I go for as many details as I can. I ask, like, well, what were they feeling? I try to convey as much emotion as I can from the experience, because every single little detail, because I like yourself, I'm just insanely curious about this stuff.
All right.
And like I said, that for now, that's the best way I could step into the experience, because, how they say that, if you're skeptical, you're not going to get this kind of thing happening to you.
Right.
Well, I am a bit skeptical and critical of myself as well, but stuff just like this just doesn't happen to me all that much, which is why when it does on the rare occasion, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's enjoy this type of thing.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You also said on the topic of these aliens, these grays, you're into the whole abduction phenomenon, right?
Oh yeah, I'm very curious about it. It's definitely one of my favorite topics to talk about, whether it's the breeding program, the relationship, the covert cloak and dagger with the government, all that type of stuff. People talk about disclosure, and I roll my eyes about it, because it's like, I don't care. Give me a body, give me a craft.
Yeah. So where are you at on all this? It's such a broad topic. When you get into, for lack of a better word, aliens, when you get into the topic, I know, your knowledge on this is probably way more expansive than mine. But how broad of a topic is that? You know what I mean? It's like there's so many rabbit holes and so many different avenues you can go down on this topic. So I'm gonna ask you a really vague, impossible to answer question, and it'll probably be, what do you think aliens are? Like what is it we're dealing with, man?
I've heard my favorite possibility is the co-creation theory, that there is a something out there that interacts with us. And I do believe that our culture sort of acts as a sort of prop department for the phenomenon.
Okay.
And it's going to show up as something. And a lot of people use that to liken the alien abduction phenomenon to the fairy folk accounts. And I consider that very interesting. And I do feel like it's a valid argument.
As do I.
And I do understand that I'm open to the possibility that they could be related. That the fairy folk is just like another form of window dressing that accounts for this something else that is going on. And as far as the I know a lot of people like there's a certain camps like the nuts and bolts, the ETH, the extraterrestrial, if they're extraterrestrials and they have to come from out there, as in space wise. And, on that one, I'm a bit taken back now because I don't know, because, people are talking in the media. We're seeing more about multidimensional type of stuff. And in our fiction, I regard the whole multiverse stuff as it's just a crutch for bad writing.
Right.
Because we've seen all the Kate movies where like all this stuff, it's like, oh, I've written myself into a hole. How do I correct it? Multiverse.
Yep.
And then I could just rewrite history.
Yeah.
And I do feel like that is creating some cultural pollution in our paranormal. Now, as far as multiverse goes in our stuff, like, could there be other dimensions out there? Yeah, I understand that could be a thing, because we've seen, I think on one of your prior episodes, you talked about the nuclear silos and stuff like that UFOs would visit them and mess with them. And then when we had all the nuclear testing, we would also see spikes in visitations and people seeing UFOs and all that stuff.
Right.
And, there could be something to, whenever it comes to nuclear energy, splitting the atom and all that stuff like that, that maybe that is causing a rippling effect within the dimensions that whatever other is out there encounters. And then it comes back to I guess sort of, do an investigation to see what's going on. As far as, the whole, why are they coming here? Why us type of thing. In the contactee literature, in the contactee lore, there was a steady escalation. I mean, for most of the accounts, depending on how far back you go, it seems like, I don't know if they came out the gate, just putting us in jars right away. But what I think mostly happened was, we witnessed an escalation where before we would see like little men or little men, off in the distance. They'd get out of their UFO, they'd collect soil samples and what have you, and then get up and leave. And then, they started appearing outside our windows, outside our doors, and coming in to get us next, to sample us next. And now it's escalated to a point where they're just appearing at our bedsides, doing, whatever it is that they want, and, having their way. And, for all we know, this could have been happening, because there's been counts in the 1800s where people would see, how, as they best could describe UFOs, the airships of old.
Yep.
And they would have, little, again, short men in uniforms coming down, awkwardly reacting with the men at the time, who at the most point were, usually heavily drinking or something of that nature. But as far as that, it does seem to be like a cycling escalation that I've witnessed in our own lore, that, the grays, the aliens are not crawling through our windows anymore. And I'm pretty sure that they're ecstatic at that, because, it's like, oh, good, I don't have to, because, some of these windows are like 8 feet off the ground. So that means when he crawls in, he's standing on the shoulders of like 5 or 6 of his buddies outside. So they don't have to do that anymore. It's like, oh, good, we could just melt through the wall. I don't have to climb through the window anymore. But it's just, and I don't know what to make of it. I'm still gathering data.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring stuff out. I'm not so much an investigator or a researcher myself. I'm just, more of like a podcast. I talk to people.
Yeah.
I'll watch accounts and stuff of that nature. I'll listen to stories.
Yeah.
But from what I can gather of all these people, I just don't know what to make of it, because if we look at, because the old stories would tell us that they came here for our gold. Mm-hmm. The Anunnaki narrative of that nature.
Right.
And we know we know that there are resources out there where you can find gold and stuff on other planets and other meteors and stuff like that is way more plentiful than what you'll find here.
Right.
Same thing for water. Same thing for clean air and all of that stuff. You can find that elsewhere. You don't need to come here for that. But the only thing that I can think of that's here, that's different and unique and interesting, it's probably us, for that matter. We're the resources. We're what's being farmed of that nature. We are the curiosity.
Yes, we are.
And
I agree with that.
I mean, and everything is just so strange out there, because I mean, you've had like a cat in your arms, and you pet him, and then you turn your hand into a claw and attack him, and then he just has the fight of his life, and then you make your hand not a claw anymore, and he looks around, like, I mean, as far as you were playing with your cat.
Right.
As far as what your cat knows, he was just sitting there chilling, and then a monster came and attacked him, and he fought him off with everything he had. He had the fight of his life, and then the monster disappeared.
Right.
It's the same experience. So that's what I think is happening with us. We're the cat, and whatever's holding us is the phenomena. And every now and then it likes to mess with us. And as far as we know, we just had this harrowing experience. That's
Right.
sort of how I think. And and I do think that sort of happens with what I hear of the kid in black phenomena, or the black-eyed kids.
Yo, man, yeah.
Yeah, because that sends chills, and I'm thinking the same thing, that even though we're seeing, as far as what we can tell is little children, there's probably off in the background some other creature, some extension of it, which is the phenomenon itself, just peeking over the corner, watching us interact, just sort of messing with us, testing us, giving us the fight of our life, as far as we can experience.
That's a good way to look at it too. These lights that we see in the sky, that's really just a laser pointer, and somebody is
exactly, similar,
crazy. Yeah,
like the anchorfish.
Yeah,
it has the large bright bulb
in
front of its head. And then we were drawn to it because we're so curious, and then when we get close enough, it gobbles us up.
Yeah, I like it.
That's kind of like how I see that sort of experience coming about. And I mean, the black-eyed kid stuff, I got to dig more into that, about as much as I can, because some people try to relate them to the grays, and I guess that's just because of superficiality, because of the eyes, and I don't believe it's the same thing. It just, something about it just doesn't sit right with me.
Right.
It sounds more supernatural than like what we see with aliens and stuff. It's something, it feels like a different category.
Yes, perfect word.
It feels more like a spiritual type of interaction rather than an abduction account, like as far as dealing with an entity, an outworldly entity.
Right. And even at that level, that's why I said the topic is so broad. I've had several evolutions of thought, as to aliens, because that was my jam, man. When I was young, I was all about aliens, and so I've had theories, and the more I hear and the more I learn and the more I talk to people and other podcasts that I listen to and books that I take in and read, it's just like one theory leads into something else. And at this point, like, I feel like I'm understanding more, but even what I'm understanding has just recently scattered out into like a dozen other possibilities. So I'm asking, I'll ask you what you think aliens are, because I'm trying to glean more information. There's more that I want to learn. Am I off on the wrong trail? Is it something else?
Well, the only accounts that we have isn't what the experiencers are told.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't told us anything, like you and me. They haven't come up on the television screen or whatever and said, we're the aliens. This is the straight poop. No, instead, everything we get hit is secondhand from the experiencer. And until you're an experiencer yourself, I don't know if you are. I'm sure you've had some harrowing experiences yourself, as well as I have, that, you know, we could just go by what we're told by the phenomenon when we encounter it in whatever form it is.
Right.
The thing that I find interesting is the more we learn, the more the phenomenon escalates. It changes its backstory.
Yeah.
It's like a little D&D character sheet, and it's like, they don't believe in that anymore. Let me scratch that out.
Right.
Okay, we're not from Atlantis anymore. We're from Lemuria now.
Right.
Oh, wait, hang on. Let me erase that. We're not from Lemuria anymore. We're from Tartaria.
Right.
And it's because I have noticed that escalation, whereas before we had Valiant Thor, and he was from Venus.
Right.
And then everyone was from Mars. And now everyone is from Alpha Centauri. Everyone is the Pleiadians from whatever the Sirius, the dog star that they came from.
Right. And that's quickly becoming now, like you said, the multiverse. The it's another dimension. That way, that can be such a lazy excuse.
Yeah, what I was saying in our entertainment, it's to cover up bad writing.
Yes.
It's like all of a sudden I have this mystery box magic cure-all to cover up all my bad writing prior.
Yep.
And it does come off like bad fiction.
Yep.
But if that's sort of, that's our latest hurdle right now, is multidimensional, universal type of stuff like that. And I mean, I don't know what the next iteration is going to be, but the multi-dimensional type of stuff, I'm okay with it to a point, up until we start talking time travel, because then that's a whole basket of cats there.
It is because go ahead.
Because of the whole infinite possibilities.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if people understand what infinite means, because you've heard of the butterfly effect,
right?
Like if something flaps its wings, a hurricane here, and if it doesn't flap its wings, a monsoon somewhere else.
Yep.
Well, we have to take into account that there are millions of butterflies that are flapping and not flapping. There are millions of people that are walking down the right-hand side rather than the left-hand side of the hallway. And every single one is going to cause a million possibilities. So that's where the term infinite comes in to cover it.
Right.
That there are infinite possibilities. So even if we were to, cross into another dimension, it's probably going to look exactly like our dimension, because we're not going to know exactly what the variant it was that created it.
Right. And
there's so many different variant possibilities and all that. And it just becomes a headache when people try to manage it.
Yep. You're right. And plus there's the whole, when you touched on time travel, if time travel is ever going to be possible, then it's possible right now. Right. If it's ever possible, then that means that they're traveling through time right now. Yeah. Then if time travel is true and possible, then that would have to mean that you and me are living the best possible outcome. Yes. Because then whatever baby dictator was already killed, whatever catastrophe was already stopped. Yep. Whatever, someone who came back to shoot his grandfather, he probably was already stopped, type of thing. And another, and it's just that would mean then that this is the best possible outcome, which is, and what does that say about history? That, I mean, stuff had to happen, and I've heard people make the hypothetical speculation of, if you could take out, a certain influential dictator in the 1940s or when they were a baby, would you? Right. And the thing is,
when are you a savior and when are you just another murderer?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, what does that say about, you know, that someone is willing to kill an infant, you know, rather than instead, you know, give that person like some more a better pep talk when during their most influential time and say, hey, you know what? Politics probably isn't for you. Stay in art school.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Buy some of his paintings or something. I mean,
yeah. Or at least, you know, stick with art.
Right.
Stick with art, you know, because influencing people, yeah, you could be good at it, but stick with art, you know. You know, and that probably could have, you know, I mean, but the thing is that I do feel like history and stuff, even the ugly stuff, even the pain is necessary, because how else are we going to know what that ultimate evil is unless we experience it?
That's right.
Unless we've seen an example of it.
That's right.
I mean, look at what's happening now, you know, sort of not to get too into the woods, but with the whole cancel culture, stuff like this, of that nature,
Yes.
and ugly internet, you know, just egregious behavior of people who are willing to, they'll go to any end to try to destroy someone's life for no other reason than there's a mild, insignificant disagreement, which has no bearing on their lives whatsoever. But people are willing to go that distance because they don't understand empathy. They don't have an appreciation of history. They don't understand what pain and suffering really is, and that they're willing to, you know, go as far as they can to, you know, quote unquote, deperson people, to deplatform people, because, you know, oh, I don't like what they said about X. Completely forgetting that, you know, you don't have to sit in on that conversation. You're not the audience. It's not for you. You can go someplace else, but that's not enough. Right. I have to take it away from everyone, type of thing. And
right.
And, you know, and I do feel like it's, you know, in some part, you know, we're to blame as a society, in that we fostered those people. We fostered that generation.
Right. Yeah. We've allowed it to go, and we pandered to it until now. We're stuck dealing with it. Like, nobody drew a line in the sand. And so now, you know,
I mean, we talk about the what is it? Let me think here. You know how there's the romanticized Wolf of Wall Street movie with, you know, the was it the Wall Street guys, the Color of Money, all these romanticized Wall Street tales of, you know, these guys coming from nothing and then growing into prominence. But, you know, where's all the romanticized stories of the rise of Silicon Valley? Maybe one or two movies, and it's not even all that romanticized. It's pretty much just these geeky, nerdy guys, you know, coming into prominence with a social media app,
right?
And then you know, now they have the world at their fingertips and stuff like this, and they really can't do anything. You know, no one admires them, no one looks up to them. They're not aspirational figures, you know, but they have this ultimate control over stuff. You know, I mean, when we actually peel back the veil and look at the people who are adamant about taking everything away from us, we see that no matter what, they're going to be miserable. No matter what, they don't understand happiness, and it's really sad. But, you know, it's something that I think in time we're all going to have to deal with, you know, in one means or another.
Yeah, because it won't stop. That's the thing. If one person's ruined, and you could ruin the lives of thousands of people by canceling one person, you know, however long or wide their reach is, their platform is, or their business or whatever. Once that's done, you have to go get satiated somewhere else, you know, so that the culture just moves to something else. There's a new target.
Yeah. And it's all done under the guise of safety and righteousness.
Right.
By people who have no respect or understanding of morality or righteousness to begin with.
Yeah, there's no righteousness there.
Yeah,
right?
well, they espouse it like this is for the good of for the greater good.
Right.
But when you ask them what the greater good is, you know, you know, it's whatever they feel like at the moment,
Yep.
not what the actual greater good is, not the people
Right.
around them, you know.
Yep.
And that is rather sad.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, there's a major cultural shift in America. I imagine it's worldwide. I imagine that, you know, this, whatever you want to call it, you know, most people just call it woke. You know,
Well,
the whole woke movement.
I would push back against that.
Yeah.
I would say it only goes so far as the Western English speaking influences, because we're the ones dealing with it.
Yeah.
You're not hearing about this type of stuff in China. You're not hearing about this stuff in India.
Right.
You're definitely not hearing about it in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Because if they do, they're being tossed off a roof.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because they live under like a theocracy, you know. Yeah. There's no room for that. There's no room for that in China.
Yeah. And all
it's the exploitation of our freedoms is why it's happening. It's just like, if you allow kids in class to leave their phones out on the table while they're taking a test, there's going to be a few that want to cheat. You know what I mean? That they got to take advantage of having that there. They can't just enjoy that they can keep an eye on the time. They have to pull up the Google, you know what I mean, and cheat a little bit. There's always going to be that person that exploits their liberties. And
yeah, I mean, I think we don't understand what learning is anymore.
Right.
We see everything as stimulation now, and we're all about, you know, what's the next thing. And I love chasing trends. I do. I love trends. I love, you know, what's the next best big thing? What is the latest meme, you know, that's making the circuit now. I love that stuff. I love my cartoons. I love my comic books, right, and all of that. But, you know, I mean, genuine learning, genuine education, you know, learning people just to focus on anything, just to take the time to focus on everything. I mean, before we used to read everything, and now we're having everything read to us. You know, I mean, I'm saying as long as we're learning, but it's that we have to take the initiative to focus on something.
Man.
And some people just focusing on anything. I mean, we have it now where you can get everything, you know, these podcasts are exploding. YouTube is exploding with people, you know, just pretty much just talking to one another.
That's it. Yeah. And there's a show, and I found myself watching it, and I understood immediately why I was watching it. And it's a longing that's going on in the world. Yeah, and you're nailing it. We're sitting here watching other people talk. We're watching other people have an experience. We're watching other people do this or that because we don't do it ourselves anymore. I fell in love with this woman she had a cooking show. I don't know how old she is. She's an older lady. I think her last name's Gant or something like that. She's become a popular YouTube sensation and Facebook, you know, celebrity. It's just an older lady from the South that she turns on the camera in her kitchen and she cooks food and she talks to you like you're her grandkid, you know, like she's talking to the grandbabies. And I'm sitting there watching it and I'm thinking, I thoroughly enjoy this and I know why. You know, my grandmothers have passed. I don't have that, you know, so I watched that and let myself enjoy it for that reason. You know what I mean? I don't care what she's cooking. I want my mom to talk, you know?
Yeah. It's the, like I've heard of in YouTube that there are called, you know, dad channels.
Yeah.
Where it's just, you know, dad advice and stuff like that.
Yeah. And people love that. They need that.
Yeah. And it's, you know, and a lot of, you know, even when I look at this, it doesn't matter the channel size. You see in the chat, people are just hanging out, you know, because before we used to hang out at the bar and engage in conversation there, engage in debate there. And now we do it electronically. I mean, just us hanging out, you know, I mean, if we were in the same neighborhood, and we didn't have the internet, we'd be at the bar talking to each other.
Yeah.
It would be, hey, Bo, this guy comes in, you ought to talk to him sometime. And then they tell me like, hey, this friend of ours, he's kind of in the same stuff you are. His name's Bo. He comes in on Saturdays. Why don't you guys just sit down and hang out?
Yeah.
That would be, that would be the community.
That would.
And now that with the community, yeah, we can seek each other out and we can talk to each other about some of the most, outlandish things. I mean, we're talking paranormal right now.
Right.
But you and me could probably go 3 hours talking about anime or comic books or whatever.
Right.
Or daytime soaps, whatever,
Oh.
But yeah, it's that community that's there now.
It is. And there's I'm trying to not allow myself to get too far off. I know you just mentioned we're here talking about the paranormal, but there's so many other things that I think you and I could talk about. It might not be for your show or for my show, but there's just so many things that I see in this world that I think that you and I see eye to eye on.
Yeah.
Especially the effects of what's going on in the world today, the effects of having the convenience of the internet versus learned knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's sort of that lack of, appreciating experience and understanding discipline.
Yeah.
Classical discipline.
Yeah.
In that, we have an undisciplined generation that has power, and that's all they know is it's like, well, I need to be this X, Y, and Z so that I can obtain power. And it's gotten to the point that they're cutting off body parts to maintain that power.
Yeah.
But the thing is, hopefully, culture will move on. But then what's going to happen to these people, and it's really rather sad that, people are trying to change reality. But, the thing is that, you can only push reality so far. Even in the paranormal, we are asking a lot of reality when we have these encounters, but we're trying to understand something. We're not trying to force it.
Right. Yes. But yeah, the shift has happened everywhere, and I'm gonna, before I say something that's going to get me in trouble too much. I don't care too much about what I say, but I do have to consider a few things. I can tell you later, but this cultural shift, let's go with that. This cultural shift has happened everywhere, and you've talked about cultural changes. Let's get into that a little bit in the paranormal realm or in the unexplained realm. I have one. I have something that's it eats me alive. It's kind of a pet peeve, and it's really gee whiz stuff compared to what we've been talking about. It's just like a personal preference kind of thing, I guess. In this paranormal encrypted world, I cannot stand the cultural shift of cryptids being cute and cuddly. Mothman having little, cute little, like a potato with wings, and Bigfoot smiling or being pink or whatever. I can't stand that. I want cryptids to be scary, and I tried that hashtag. I tried to make cryptids scary again. It didn't go anywhere. But that's one of the cultural changes that I absolutely can't stand. But it sells like hotcakes. This generation loves that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I understand. I'm also partially responsible for propagating that.
I've done it a couple times myself.
Yeah, but, and but I can understand that there is, as far as the cute little potato Mothman and all that stuff of that nature, there is, I can understand its purpose as far as being entry level.
Yeah. For
baby kids and stuff to relate to. And then when they're ready to learn about the scary stuff, when they're old enough, then they can get into that.
Right.
Because I don't think that the scary stuff, it's not going to go away.
Right.
Yeah, it's, we may tuck it someplace else, but I mean, the more terrifying accounts, the Whitley Strieber, his accounts will still be there. The
Right.
Travis Walton Fire in the Sky, that'll still be there.
Yes.
I mean, I have yet to see a cute, cuddly Travis Walton plush of his experience, of the people, of what was done to him.
Right.
That hasn't been done yet,
Right.
and but yeah, I do get your frustration.
Cause I'm more like in Stalk Comics, I'm more like a late 80s, early 90s, I like I don't know, it's just a little grimier, I like Savage Sword of Conan kind of comics.
Yeah, like a sort of grungy type of era.
Yeah,
I grew up in that era as well. I mean, I was like a little kid in the 80s when I would watch Back to the Future, and I would play Back to the Future 2 on my Commodore 64.
Yeah, man.
The edition I bought came with a hat, and it was a neon hat, and I'd wear it everywhere to school. and of course, back then you got beat up for that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then coming into, adulthood, coming of age in the 90s, when it was cast away everything from the 90s, because that's old hat.
Right.
This is the new, live in the now. And everything was, just have a plaid shirt and tie it around your waist. It's grunge now, wallet chains.
Yep.
And I would have to buy 2 wallet chains because I needed to hook the 2 chains together, because otherwise, because I was a big guy. And the Jinko jeans and all that stuff is just a crazy era.
Yeah.
And the era of attitude. So I get it. I get where you're coming from.
That's it.
And I'm, and we do seem to have like a bit of a revival
there is
of attitude era type of stuff, which I hope comes back. But again, it's falling on the eyes and ears of an ignorant public.
Yeah.
And I step back into the culture stuff again.
It's all right, because like I said, I teach in high school.
I've heard so many people talk about this is the first this is the first that, the first X, Y, Z, whatever. And those of us that grew up in the 90s, it's like, what, first? What are you talking about?
Right.
We had that back in the 90s, and we didn't call it the first. It was just, we were just enjoying it. Like, what's the thing now? I think that the kids are patting themselves on the back for, like, Black Panther, the first Black superhero. And you and me know, it's like, we had Blade in the 90s.
Yep.
What are you talking about?
Yep.
And it's, and I'm sure that there was even stuff before that.
Oh yeah.
But again, it's this obsession with, acknowledging the first of whatever and getting pats on the back for that. And we know that maybe this is carryover from the trophy era, the trophy kid era, where we would give kids trophies for showing up. And no wonder why they're obsessed with being first. They want that accomplishment.
They have to have that recognition.
Yeah, that recognition for accomplishment. And they said, well, I'm, it's like a kid that throws up his arms and he says, I win. What are we playing? We're playing I Win. like a callback to an old Adam Sandler film.
Oh man.
But yeah, I mean, and bringing it back to the paranormal, all the cutesy pie stuff. It's like, yeah, I get that you could get sick of it. I see the round plushes too, the pillows, the squishables, as they call them, of the Mothman and of the Cthulhu, the cute little Cthulhu. I mean, I dig it. I love it. So we're going to have to agree to disagree on that. But I do understand, but I still, love a taste of the scary stuff, or the terror.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
And some of the most, when you experience real fear, I mean, it's, especially when you survive it, after the fact, it's like, what just happened?
Right.
You're putting yourself in a headspace of, this isn't something that I'm used to, in my day-to-day existence. I shouldn't be on the edge of my seat, hanging on for dear life, in my regular day-to-day life.
Right.
The only time that I could say I probably experienced, paranormal terror was during my sleep paralysis episodes. And at the time, I didn't account it to any kind of spiritual anything, because I knew what sleep paralysis was. But when you have the experience, you still feel the flood of emotion. You still feel that flood of terror coming over your body, even though, I know what's going on, but you're still in the moment. And it's like, well, I understand cars, and now I'm in a car crash. But when time slows down, as the metal's wrapping around you, you're still scared. You're still in that experience. You're still in the experience, even if you can scientifically plausibility it out.
Right.
And in one of my experiences, I believe it was daytime, and I was napping because I had done an overnight at work or whatever. For some reason, I was taking a nap during the day. And I was laying in my bed, and I had, like majority of sleep paralysis, you're going to experience this stuff on your back. And then I just feel, the weight of my body not moving, and I'm just locked. And again, the only thing that can move is my head. I'm like, oh, great. And it's not just that your body is heavy, but also you experience that rush, like a dopamine rush of fear. You feel terrified, even though you have no good reason to be terrified. You still feel it. And it's just in the moment, it's terrifying. And I'm sitting there and I'm terrified. And then, the door opens, and in walk two figures. They were two men, two misshapen men. They would be no distinguishable than you and me, but they were misshapen somehow, in that something looked off. They looked like cartoons made into real life type of thing. One was wearing a plaid shirt, and blue jeans and stuff of that nature, and had a big old fluffy mustache, and brown, long, spiky hair. And the other one was a tall, almost egg-shaped man that had a black hat, and his shirt had his belly hanging out, and pretty much just is practically a crop top over his big stomach. And he had, black shorts on, and they would rummage through my room. And every now and then they would look back at me to make sure that I wasn't moving, that I was still, stuck in space, that I hadn't moved yet. And they would just rummage through my room, go through my drawers. And this was the weird part. Aside from, looking like monstrosities, they would open closets into walls that didn't have closets. There was no closet there, but they opened a door to a closet in a wall, like almost like they were opening a door to another dimension or something like that. Yeah. And they would go through, clothes and stuff that were there. They were going through like all these liminal spaces in my room. And then as I slowly got control of my body back, they would then just slink off and disappear. And then I would get up, and I'm pretty sure that the door was still closed when I finally got my faculties back. And I had 2 layers of security. I had, electronic security, and then deadlocks.
All right.
And I checked them all. My windows and doors were dead bolted, and the electronic security was active and undisturbed. There was no, I know what happened to me. I know it was a sleep paralysis event, but I still had that fear, and I had to check it just to calm myself, just to put myself back into the regular headspace that, I've done everything to make absolutely sure. And then in my room where I was sleeping, nothing was disturbed. Nothing was trifled through. Nothing was shifted through. And it was just, but again, it was just the experience felt real and was real as far as I was concerned. I still felt that dread. And sometime I got to commit these characters to paper because they were so distinct. But it's just, it's just that weird thing. And they were just going through stuff just to go through stuff and opening doors just to open them. Just everything, pulling out drawers and stuff like that, and just to look, just to invade that private, just to create that, just to escalate the evasiveness of their presence.
Yeah, just to violate your space there. Mm-hmm. That's so interesting too, because that's the first time really that I've heard some sleep paralysis stories to where, people would wake up and they would see something rifling through closets that weren't necessarily there, or through a chest of drawers, that was undisturbed when they broke free. But there's usually something confining you, something that's holding you there. Mm-hmm. But you didn't have that.
No, I just felt the heaviness of my body.
Wow. And plus your images were more human than.
Yeah, they were more humanoid. My friend and fellow podcaster, Chris James, he writes all these books and paranormal stuff. You should talk to him sometime. I'll give him your information. He said, he cracked the best joke. He said, it sounds like it sounds like you were visited by the people of Walmart. Oh, try not to laugh.
That's pretty cold.
But that's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah.
People of Walmart.
Wow.
You were abducted by the people of Walmart.
So what do you make out of these, sleep paralysis? The world I live in, Chris, I'll be honest, man. Everything is real to me, and everything has some kind of either physical or spiritual reality. Yeah. And sometimes the two merge. So to me, when you have a sleep paralysis experience, you're, in my camp, it feels like you're under some kind of spiritual attack.
From my perspective, I'm willing to write it off as it's just I was experiencing a stress-induced chemical imbalance in my brain. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the no fun, no frills, scientifical stuff like that. I am satisfied with that. However, because of that experience, I feel I have gained insight that allows me to empathize with people who have had abduction experiences. That I understand what it's like to be at the mercy of a extraordinary being. So when I approach contactees or experiences, whatever they call themselves, people who are at the receiving end of the phenomena, I feel that I've been gifted some sort of insight that allows me to empathize with their plight, that I can better illustrate their accounts. And when I speak to them, I can better understand them and connect with them on a level that maybe, anyone else would not take that time to understand it from that perspective.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Because like you said, the feeling, the sensations are all there. Yeah, but that's just, I don't know. I haven't had a sleep paralysis experience. I've been around people who have a lot. Mm-hmm. I've talked to a lot of people who have, but I haven't experienced that. That's why maybe if I had one for myself, then I'd be able to understand it a little more in depth. But
yeah, it's something I'm, as far as I can recall from what research I've done on it, it's supposed to do with how you manage stress. That if you're overwhelmed by stress, it's more likely to happen. And when some people, they can will themselves out of it, and slowly gain control by doing the what they call the finger trick. You start rolling the tip of your finger, and as you do that, you regain control of your body inch by inch.
Okay.
And that's a little trick that people use when they're in that state. And I would feel myself, lulling into that state, and I'd will myself out of it. And usually it's just, because, oh, I feel it coming on, let me get myself out of it. And then it's just a sort of, I can feel my body shutting off and going to sleep. It's not like I feel an outworldly source, forcing something. I don't feel forced upon it. It's more like, yeah, my body is just shutting down right now for going into sleep. So I just need to, just will myself out of it and then just change sleeping position so I'm more comfortable, type of thing. Okay. But as far as since then, I have not had a sleep paralysis episode since, and that'll probably be a couple of years. And I think that's mostly because I think it's because I'm in a better place in life, and the stress of whatever it is,
right,
that would facilitate that experience probably isn't there anymore.
Gotcha. Now, see, like I said, I haven't had a sleep paralysis experience, but I used to have a lot of nightmares, and I would have a recurring villain quite often in my nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in that level, I can understand, but even then, if you could have some lucidity in your dream to where you can come like, no, this ain't going to happen. I know this ain't real, you kind of break out of that, right?
Yeah. Just off the cuff, I think I figured out nightmare. What do I call it? Nightmare. I'm trying to think of a clever name to call it. Like nightmare self-defense. I figured that out.
Oh yeah.
I figured out, where you can't punch, you cannot throw a punch in a dream.
Right.
It does not fall flat. It just doesn't happen. The reality will not allow it.
Right.
However, you can throw in a dream. So whenever I experience whatever it is, if any type of nightmare comes up to me, I will grab whatever it is and then throw its ass out. Because because you can still throw stuff. You just have to grab a hold of it and then just throw it into a wall.
Yeah.
And as far as the experiences goes, that's how I best deal with stuff. I just grab it and toss it, and just pull it into a wall or something of that nature.
Yeah.
That's my best tip for dream combat, as far as nightmare kung fu or
yeah. I like it. That's like the Hulk smash of dreams.
Yeah. Because that's just because it works.
Yeah.
I wouldn't talk about it. I have yet to see it fail.
My enemy in my dream is cliche as it could possibly get. It was snakes. I would have dreams about snakes. I have zero fear of snakes. I've owned snakes as pets. I worked with snakes when I worked with the Department of Natural Resources. Mm-hmm. Snakes don't bother me. It don't matter if they're venomous, non-venomous, no matter. But my dreams, it was almost every single time it's some kind of battle with a snake, and I'll try to run and it's like I was running through cement. I couldn't go anywhere. And then the snake's trying to get me in slow motion and I wake up or whatever. But there was a time, it's probably been about 5 years ago, I had a dream, and it was one of these horrible snake dreams where I had no control, and it was just, I was getting attacked and bit all over. And then I killed the snake, and it was like I don't know if it was myself talking or I heard it be said that this is the last snake dream you're going to have. It's over. And I woke up and I haven't had another dream about a snake since. It's like I beat my enemy. I'm good to go. And I haven't had another dream. Like I've had maybe some disturbing dreams, but nothing scary. No big bad guys no more. And it's weird.
Yeah. I know, like a lot of people, they don't like to fit dreams into the paranormal, or they like to fit dreams too much into the paranormal. Mm-hmm. and count it as experiences. I don't know what to make of it. I'm okay with it, with our subconscious working stuff out.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that because that puts us in a better state of mind
Yeah.
to move forward and ask questions and deal with stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like how I'm thankful for my paralysis experiences because it gives me empathy.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. I do tend to separate, you know, a sleep experience from one while I'm conscious. You know, I do tend to separate those quite a bit, but I like to hear about those experiences because, again, I believe in a spiritual realm. You know what I mean?
It's like explaining synchronicity,
right?
Like you don't understand it unless it happens to you.
Yeah.
And then when it does, it's the significance of it is greatest. It's greatest to you, and it's hard to translate that to other people.
Yeah.
You know, like when you hear people talk about numbers, like every single time I look up, I'll see 1111 or whatever, and we're like, yeah, so. But they attach a special significance to it. So for them, it's a synchronicity.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So it means something special to them.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess through understanding through our dream stuff, we could like at least get better empathy and understand how that happens and how it relates, that we can relate to, like, yeah, I get how that can, I can get how you feel about that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because otherwise it's just like, it was just a dream, right? You know what I mean? That's like the typical response you get. So you're saying it was just a dream. Okay, moving on, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know we've been on here for a minute, but I wanted to get into another topic, if you don't mind.
Yep.
I
got time. I got time for you.
All right. I have probably about another half hour at least, but I don't know if you want to go that long or not. But
no, I can do another half hour, and then if you need to split this up, you can split it up.
Okay. We touched on, and your email touched on, Dogman. Let's do a deep dive. You like Dogman? I never get to talk about Dogman. I had the Dogman guy. I had Dark Waters on my show, but I was afraid to talk about Dogman because he does it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he gets some of the best stories now.
Yeah.
I want to be sure to, because there is a bit of a difference between a skinwalker and a dogman, a rougarou versus a dogman, versus a werewolf versus a dogman. That when I talk about dogman, I'm talking specifically the what is supposedly the natural born entity. It's not something that transformed into anything. Okay. A dogman was a dogman. There was always a dogman, and somehow we came across it, because a rougarou is a transformation, a werewolf is a transformation, something that is sort of a natural creature. That's sort of the guy that I like to focus on.
Could you give me like an in-depth, tell me about Dogman? Because I'll be honest, for whatever reason, I chose for Dogman to be the one cryptid I didn't believe in for a long time. You know, I was totally open to Bigfoot. I was totally open to Mothman. I was totally open to the Jersey Devil. But Dogman, I was like, no, too hokey. And my dad and I argued. I've had Dad on the show, 4 or 5 times, but we argued about Dogman and stuff. But I have lately had to concede. There has to be something going on. It's way too popular. There's way too much activity. But now I'm behind the times, and I haven't done the research. So explain it to me like I'm 8 years old. Is that what Michael Scott said?
Yeah. As far as the Dogman, from what I've gathered, from what I've listened to, now I haven't done as much deep dives, because a lot of the dives that I go into is basically run-of-the-mill stories. It's I saw something, a flash of something, it snarled at me, I had an experience, and then that's it.
Right.
or I was attacked, or I was followed, or something of that nature. And those ones, it's like, yeah, I have a file for that, but it's not really what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is the more, otherworldly ones,
Right.
something different, something unique that like puts it someplace where it normally isn't. Now, I can't off the top of my head come up with like a few compelling case accounts to do as a deep dive, so I'm just going to have to do a generalization.
Yeah, that's great.
But as far as we know, as the Dogman, it's supposed to be it has evolved as well, like how I was telling you about how the alien abduction phenomena has evolved.
Right.
Before, when these guys first came out, they were about like maybe 4 or 5 feet tall. They were short. They would, people would catch them, they would be quadrupeds at first, and then they would convert to bipedal mode, sort of like a Veritech. It would go from Jerwalk mode to Battleoid mode, like a transformer. And the distinction was you could hear the hips pop as it would convert from a quadrupedal stance to a standing stance. And that was in the early accounts, when we had the first Dogman resurgence that I believed happened in, I want to say, the late 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
That was the popular thing, was that, were you close enough to hear the hips pop? Now, Dogman is like, anywhere from 7 to 12 feet tall.
Right.
He's now, you don't hear the hips pop. I don't think people even mention that anymore.
I've never heard that. Like that.
Yeah.
I'm learning right now.
Yeah, that was in the earliest coast to coast stories. That's what we would hear when I would listen to this stuff on the AM on Coast to Coast, was the popping hips, and that's not talked about anymore. And I don't know why that is. I don't know when that started disappearing or what changed it. And I don't know if this was always the case, but, whenever anyone who's armed has these things in sight, it will like telepathically, they would get like some sort of telepathic message. I don't know, for some reason, the Bigfooters like to say mind speak.
Right.
It's
telepathy,
I can't,
right? Is it not?
Yeah. I mean, I don't care what glossary you're losing. It's telepathy. Yeah. They would get the impression of, you don't want to do that. That's a bad idea. And they would have that ingrained in their skulls as they're looking at this thing, and that would, of course, refrain them from firing upon this thing. And those who do fire upon it, they would then, any type of firearms would have, minimal, if any, effect on them. It would just piss them off, as far as we could tell.
Right.
Now, as far as we could gather from an evolutionary stance, a lot of the bigwig guys out there, mentioned that there's really no evolutionary a branch for these guys to come off of. Like, as far as Bigfoot, yeah, it's understandable that there could be an ape-like creature that's similar to man, either Neanderthal or something of that nature. There could be there's a branch, but with a bipedal Dogman, there's no branch. There's very rarely a branch. Maybe something that's probably more built like a bear rather than a dog. But then these things are described as, slender to very muscular.
Right. And is there a tail versus no tail? Like
most of them, I believe, have tails. I cannot. I don't know for certain. I don't know if that's the detail that I hear all that much. Yeah. But at the time, I don't think anybody's really looking at looking there and looking at their butts.
Right.
I do believe most of them, they would have tails if they are traditional canine types.
I've heard a lot of, feelings about this stuff. Like these creatures make you feel like there's impending doom. Like
the aura
that
of
you're
fear.
looking at pure evil,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's the fear aura.
Yeah.
I guess in the Evangelion anime they called it the ATF, absolute terror field.
Okay.
Something like that. I can imagine Dogman having something like that he could just turn it on.
Right.
And then you feel like absolute terror.
And this creature, can you describe, like, is it more dog or is it more man? Is it like a wolf head or is it like a
from the descriptions I've seen, it has like a more wolf type head. Some people describe it as like a Bigfoot with a snout, but most pronounced, a lot of them have very pronounced ears. So it would have the structure for the ears to be up. Because I don't think anybody's, because, you know, like you said with the tail, I don't know who's doxing Dogman's tail. Because if it's got a tail, if it doesn't have a tail, then the tail was doxed. So who doxed the tail?
right.
You know. And the same thing with the ears, they're up. You know, we see that traditionally in wolves.
Mm-hmm.
The only time that I think we see the floppy ears is with domesticated dogs.
Right.
But I have heard short-haired breeds of Dogman described as more like a having more of a head, like a pit bull type.
Really?
Or something of that nature, where it's more like a short-haired breed, but it's like, you know, extremely muscular, and I think the ears are down, like floppy ears, but they're still short.
Right.
In some cases, very rarely though. Although I probably have to really look back into that because I don't know that I have.
Right.
Or because I've seen friends do illustrations for some of their clients at shows and stuff, and that's what I see them drawing. So of course that's probably someone saw a variant of that.
Right. See, what I'll picture when I imagine what a Dogman must look like, I kind of get the and I'm sorry for cross referencing, but I get the lycanthrope from Underworld, you know.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best representation that's out there as far as film goes. As far as entertainment goes, that is probably the best representation of what a Dogman would be, because as far as their legs go, I do believe that they're on their haunches, or they walk on their toes. They walk on sort of like their foot is sort of like a digigrade, where it's on the digits.
Yeah.
And then their upper thighs would be more muscular to bear that weight.
Okay.
And then they would have, you know, so it looks like they're walking on their toes when that's just a digigrade formation of the foot. And as far as the other, you know, outlier is the chest. The chest is often described as barrel shaped, and with, you know, I think in most cases heavy pectoral muscles and shoulders and stuff like that, which
so it would have collarbones instead of a breastplate.
Yeah, something along that nature, because that's what I've heard, and that's what confuses me.
Right. Because
a quadruped, they're not going to be constructed like that biologically. But for some reason, these Dogmen are, as if the walking stance is probably more natural to them.
Right. That's what it would sound like. It would have to be.
Yeah, but then when they go quadruped, for some reason they're able to go faster, which doesn't make sense, because if you're built for bipedal locomotion, and then you go down to, you know, again, I'm just shooting from the hip here, so I know all your experts are going to send you hate mail about how full of crap I am, but the thing is that if you're built for one purpose, converting to another stance and excelling at that would be very difficult.
It would be. See, I agree with you, and that's, again, and maybe this is my cheat. You know, I say people cheat and say multiverse, multidimensional. Maybe my cheat is spiritual, you know, but it would be faster however it wants to be faster, if it's more of a, for lack of better words, demonic presence than a physical being.
Yeah, like some form of manifestation.
Yes, like a manifestation,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of
Yeah, and that could cover more bases, because then
Yeah.
then we could allow for interdimensional and such of that nature.
all right.
Because
But
a lot of people, I think it was the Skinwalker rats, they described a portal and then a Dogman like creature or Bigfoot like creature crawling out of the portal
right.
and then skedaddling.
Yeah. See, and with Skinwalker Ranch, I would have to visit that place before I believe some of the stuff that I've heard.
Mhm.
And not to say that anybody's a liar. I'm saying that in a moment of fear, or in a moment of the first time seeing certain things, our brains just kind of default to whatever it can perceive. And I think there might be some misconceptions or misidentification kind of things going on out there. I'm not opposed to there being such high EMF for whatever reason in that area that maybe it makes people, have a heightened feeling or whatever. Skinwalker Ranch confuses me, is what I should say. But with Dogman, I've only heard of a couple, one or two instances where there was an actual physical effect, like the case of the LBL, the Land Between the Lakes.
I've heard of that account. I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, that
I've heard
supposedly a dog man.
Yeah, I've heard conflicting things about it. It's if you want to start a fight anywhere, just say LBL and people start swinging.
Yeah.
I stay away from it because I don't know what to make of it. One of the trends in the Dogman community, and I kind of frown upon it because I feel it's garish, is they will take animal attacks and attribute them to Dogmen. Right. on people, and if the animal attacks are like inconclusive or something of that nature, then they'll say for absolute certainty, oh, this was a Dogman attack.
Right.
And I feel, until we know for certain, I just kind of feel that's garish and in bad taste.
I do too.
And it's disrespectful to the victims involved.
Right.
Because it just comes off as desperate. Right. It just comes on our part. It comes off as very desperate.
Right. Yeah. There was an encounter where a lady, I think it was a lady, was killed off the side of the road, right outside of her vehicle, and it looked like an animal attack. And everyone's saying, "Oh, that had to be a Dogman creature."
Yeah, and I think she had. She had like two pit bulls or two large dogs with her.
Right.
And some people. You get conflicting reports because people will say what they want to say and say this is the truth.
Right.
But there's one narrative that she walked with her dogs and she was attacked by a Dogman and her dogs fended off the Dogman. And then there's another account where she walked with her dogs because her dogs were like under immense stress, because they had spent like anywhere from months to 2 weeks with her father, and her father just kept them in the crates, which put them under stress. And then she figured she'd just take them out into a walk to de-stress them. But because they were under such immense stress, they attacked her. Even though, it's just, they're still animals and they just lashed out.
Right.
Even though they probably wouldn't have if they were in a proper state,
right,
in their proper docile state. But because of the stress that they were under, unfortunately, she was put in that circumstance. And it's, I think I might lean more towards that account, that narrative.
Right.
But as far as, because, it's very difficult to dig stuff for details on that.
Right.
Unless you go to primary source, unless you can actually find definitive primary sources.
Right.
And not a repost.
Yeah. And like you said, I would hate to just jump to conclusions for sensationalism. You know what I mean? Yeah. I would, if that was my aunt, sister, whoever, I wouldn't want that to be exploited.
Yeah, that's why I prefer the accounts where, you know, it's a fleeting glance from a witness. I'll take that over anything where there's bodies involved.
Right. And that's why I love talking to people so much, because they're like, well, I don't have anything horrifying to talk about. I'm like, that makes for the best conversation, you know, when you could just talk to me about whatever you did experience. That's what I want. It's the most relatable. It's, you know, people are going to take that in a lot easier than, you know, something just to spook you.
And there is some stuff where people like to, you know, cross pollute, like what are distinctly other entities.
Right.
Like the Rougarou, which is a form of the New Orleans, I guess, werewolf.
Right.
You know, because it is someone changing into it. It is a transformation. You know, I mean, and I think because I do remember an account, I forgot where I heard, I think it was on this podcast on Wednesdays We Talk Weird. It was one of their past episodes where a man had discussed an encounter he had in New Orleans, like way back in the 70s, where he had met this attractive woman, and she had, you know, the oddest eyes, where she had like a gold ring around the outside of her eyes, like sort of thing that was just, you know, beautiful. It's just a distinct thing. And then, you know, and then later on, you know, she like made a date with him, you know, to walk out in the park. And then he went out there, she didn't show up, but he hung out with like a couple of, you know, local guys out there. And then they went to the liquor store, which is what you do in the 70s.
Right.
And this was late at night. And then along the way, they were accosted by a female dog person. This would be a dog woman.
All right.
And she, you know, she had distinct breasts and, of course, you know, golden eyes that resembled the golden eyes of the lady. And she also had gold earrings too.
Wow. But
that distinct gold was something that he saw in the eyes of this creature. And it was a harrowing account. Definitely, you know, the way that the guy told the story, it had you on the edge of your seat. But it's just, you know, yeah, that's definitely something unique and out there. But that is more of it sounds more like a Rougarou type of thing. I don't know if I would put that in the Dogman thing, but that one I kind of think I would let it slide. Right. Because it's a variant. It's a unique variant that, you know, that just by chance it probably could have been that they just happened across a female dog person.
Right. I mean, if there's going to be an actual population of these things, if they're a physical creature, there's got to be a female dog man person. You know,
I know people don't like the names. I hear some people like to use upright canine.
Okay.
And then they'll exhaust themselves and then they just revert back to Dogman because it's just easier to say.
Right.
So, because you can keep that up for only so long.
Yeah. And that, to be completely honest, that's probably the reason why I had a hard time going with that particular cryptid was the name. I mean, I guess we grew up here in Bigfoot. So
yeah. And
kind of
I've heard there's supposed to be a long snouted Bigfoot that some people think accounts for the Dogman.
Yeah, Gugwi or something like that.
Something about that. It's some form of something with a Y, but it's some sort of variant of Bigfoot. But also, when the Dogman first came out, he was much smaller than Bigfoot, and now he's just as big as Bigfoot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Now he's like 7 to 10 foot tall, and
because I've heard some of the Dark Waters accounts where he's described of these creatures crossing paths. And in every single one, the Dogman loses every single time.
Really?
And sometimes it's even teams of Dogman because they just cannot overpower the Bigfoot.
Right.
And a lot of these Dogmans, that's another thing too. You'll see individuals, but also these guys, they're in packs as well.
Wow. See, that's frightening. The thought of this, you know, I can wrap my head around Sasquatch sharing the woods with him, you know, I accept that.
Mm-hmm.
But the thought of something as terrifying and evil, I mean, for lack of a better word, that's how I've heard it described every time, as evil, as a Dogman, would almost discourage me from going out.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the thing that I find funny is there's got to be something about it that is supernatural, because from what I've heard of the aggressive behavior, it seems to be rather careless in its aggression. And such carelessness would have led to tripping a trap, or which would lead to physical evidence, or getting on a trail cam, which again, evidence. We don't get that. Or some nature, because some people describe it, accosting their house.
Right.
And then they put up security cameras, and then, oh no, that's his weakness. He's camera shy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've heard is the best defense. If you have Sasquatch activity or Bigfoot or Dogman activity, rather, that you don't want, it's unwelcome, set up a game camera.
Yeah.
Or a security camera, and it'll stop.
Mm-hmm.
Is that poking holes in somebody that's trying to tell you a farce, or is that real? They're so aware and so protective, of themselves, that they won't allow a single photo to be taken.
Well, the thing is, I mean, a lot of security cameras and stuff, I mean, we've almost become blind to them.
Yeah.
That we really have to pay attention to even notice that they're there.
You're right.
Whereas these creatures, they seem to be very aware of it. And I think there is a speculation that they can somehow see or sense the infrared of the security.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And for some, I don't know if that's true or not, but then it seems like whatever this phenomenon is, the more the technological stuff, it seems to have an aversion to. The Patterson-Gimlin film was recorded on what is practically a crank camera,
right.
a crank powered camera that had a small, almost minuscule battery. And I don't think that the battery was there to power the mechanism, the capturing mechanism. It was there for some other reason. I don't know, but it was mostly a crank camera, and it caught, which is to this day the most debated definitive Bigfoot footage.
Yes.
Now, I mean, I think it would be cool if we were to go out there with crank cameras, and record stuff like that. Would be fun. It would be very difficult, because I used to work as a projectionist in a movie theater, and dealing with actual film is the hardest thing in the world.
I bet.
But, I just don't know what to make of it, or what we need to do, because we've all gone to digital because it's convenient. And if these things have a natural aversion to digital, then we've all just blinded ourselves to it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
But I would like to see evidence obtained through analog means, through analog technology. That would be interesting. And I do feel like some troops are going that route, where they're deciding, maybe we should try an analog approach, bringing, actual magnetic tape to record sessions, to record ghost sessions and stuff like that. And, I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I would. Well, Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to have to cut this session where we're at. I have a revival I have to go to. I gotta
completely understand.
I appreciate you so much.
Yeah,
it's so easy to talk to you.
Yeah.
It's been a great time.
No, this was fantastic. Thank you for letting me come on the show and chew the fat with you for a bit. This was great. I'm definitely on for coming back, and sometime you got to come on my show and we gotta, you know, chew the grit.
Hey, absolutely. You say the word. I got a pretty loose schedule coming up in October. I got a lot more free time. So just holler at me, man, and keep me in mind.
Yeah, we'll definitely figure it out. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, brother.